All right, welcome everybody to our next workshop. We are pleased to host another I'm excited for this round of speakers featuring speakers from the Europe and Africa or regional story sessions where we will hear basically regional advocacy efforts and hear from the heartbeat of what is pushing the Dark Sky mission forward in various parts of the world. So before we get started with that, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you're not familiar with the Dark Sky Code of Conduct, please do check that out. It is on our website. Basically, we're looking to make sure everybody has a nice, safe, welcoming dark sky event. And if you can check that out, view that here. If you have any questions, you can, of course, let us know. Make sure you know where you're going. Check out the conference schedule to check out the next workshops and sessions underway. And then if maybe this year you haven't gotten your Dark Sky t-shirt or merch yet, and here's last year's shirt actually, you can go ahead and check that out on our bonfire store. And then just a quick note, all sessions are being recorded and will be made available following our live event on our YouTube channel. I'll post the link for that as well, just real quick. And then we can get started with our speakers. I am pleased to welcome just some exceptional speakers I'm really excited to hear for. First, we'll welcome Dr. Cisco Ayula, astrotourism specialist from the country of Namibia. We also have Bronwyn Marie, curator of the Gianni Ravazotti Biodiversity Center at the Lapalala Wilderness School in South Africa, and Josh Dury, award-winning landscape astrophotographer and best-selling author, calling in from England, I believe. And so, Cisco, I'm sorry, Bronwyn, let's hand it over to you. I'm sorry about the mix-up.
Thanks very much, Chris, and no worries. I think you've been up for many hours. I haven't been around as long as you, but I've tried to stick through the night. So yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. As Chris said, I'm Bronwyn Marie, and I'm following on from a colleague who spoke in the session just before this, Gareth Thomas from Limpopo, South Africa. So maybe just to contextualize a little bit of where we are. The little tree you see on the screen, we're quite far north, near the Botswana border. We're a Big Five reserve. The area, Limpopo itself, our province, has many private reserves and protected areas, so all the green spots. And those who may know are one of our biggest protected area, Kruger National Park, to the right of the screen, just where we are in relation to that. You'll also notice the area we're in has very few cities and towns. So the closest city is Polokwane, dotted by a few towns, which in this case, they're all around 50 to 100 kilometers away from one another. So if we're just looking in terms of people density to, again, place where we are. So if you look at Gauteng, which is the red section on the map below, we're looking at about 831 people per square kilometer. When we move into Limpopo, so further north, you're getting about 47 people per square kilometer. And where we are based in the Waterberg district, we're looking at 17 people per square kilometer. So a very low density population per square kilometer area. And if you look at our SQM at the bottom, we've got a very high one between 21.89 and 21.99. This is roughly what part of our reserve looks like. We're near the Tropic of Capricorn. We're an off-grid reserve run by solar. We're also the largest privately protected area in the Waterberg Biosphere Reserve, at the moment of around 48,000 hectares. Our mission is a combination of leaving a conservation legacy involving community and education, and a small part is tourism. So just to give a little bit of a background on how this beautiful property arose to be. So it was founded by the two gentlemen at the top, the left being Clive Walker, who's a conservationist and artist by trade, as well as Dale Parker on the right. He was the businessman and conservationist at heart too. It was founded in 1981, so we're over 40 years old. And it's now grown to include around 17 farms. Some were hunting farms, some were tobacco farms, but we've turned it into a combination of a sustainable conservation initiative and a groundbreaking environmental education project, which is through the Lapalala Wilderness School, where I'm based, to emphasize interconnectedness of man and nature to deliver benefits to both. Dale Parker has since passed on, and his son and their family trust, Duncan Parker, continue the legacy together with Gianni Ravazzotti. So those are the bottom two gentlemen in the images below. So the reserve itself, as I said, is 48,000 hectares. Just to the southern boundary, we have the Lapalala Wilderness School, which is around 900 hectares. And the aim of the school is to help children and young adults discover the value of biodiversity and their place in it, and to identify and nurture Africa's future conservation champions. We have around 4,000 children or university students that come through each year, and I'll touch base a little bit more on how that fits into our dark sky advocacy and work and our whole certification. Within the reserve, we've got a very limited reserve infrastructure. We only have two commercial lodges, which you'll see on the screen from Lepocho Lodges. The one on the top left is Noka, and the bottom one is Maloti House. Very small lodges. They cater for 16 people maximum each. And then we have what we call custodian sites, and these are individually privately owned properties within the reserve. Also a maximum of 16 people per custodian site, and they're not allowed to have commercial bed nights. They're for personal and family use only. So very, very small footprint within the reserve itself. So just to give some graphics of what the reserve looks like. So this is some of the grasslands. We've got, obviously being in the Waterberg, a lot of water that flows, particularly in our summer months. We've got these beautiful cliff faces with amazing rock art. We've got about 15 sites of rock art, and just green wilderness space that you can see all around you. We're one of the lowest people density Big Five reserves in Southern Africa, and we were the first privately owned reserve to introduce black rhino back onto the reserve. We've been declared a protected area since 2020. We have around 300 bird species, 60 mammal species, of importance for conservation. We have black rhino, white rhino, cheetah, roan, and sable, to name a few. And we also the first, only off-grid vulture safe zone in South Africa. So vultures are also, many of them are critically endangered, and so we implement a number of different methods to try protect them, one of which was removing all power lines that run through the reserve to protect them from striking the power lines and dying through that process. Again, just some beautiful images. We've got a lot of cats. We've got leopards, cheetahs, lions, the smaller cats, your servals, caracals, and so on. We've got elephants. We've got all your plains games, so things like zebras, giraffes, and a variety of antelope. But we also, as you heard from Gareth a little bit earlier, have got some of the most magical small animals that are often not seen or only spend certain times in our reserve. So we've got pangolins, we have migratory birds like your barn swallows, which have recently just arrived back, and then obviously importantly insects such as your dung beetles, all of which rely heavily on dark skies for their existence. And obviously we've got beautiful dark skies, which you'll see behind me as well. So that's the Milky Way. So really, how did I get involved in the dark sky? If I'm honest, I had no idea it even existed, which is somewhat, alarming based on the fact that for my career, I've worked with migratory birds, and I've also worked in the marine space. So I should have known from turtles aspects and things like that. But essentially, it all came down to I moved from the Western Cape up to Limpopo, where the reserve is now. So from a very urban environment to a much more rural space. Um, I I was lucky enough growing up that I had a grandfather who was very interested in the stars, and so I did learn a little bit from him, and just always have admired and had awe for what's above us in the sky. And then obviously with the move, I was keen to learn more about the area, engage more with people in the area, and particularly see it in a different light, so at night. So I was tasked with looking at the dark sky certification and seeing whether our reserve could reach it. And so it was a very sharp learning curve with a couple of bumps. It's taken 2.5 years, but it's been an incredible journey. I'm not going to run through all of this, but we have been declared as a dark sky park. And for that to be the case, we obviously had to show exceptional starry nights of good quality and a large nocturnal environment. So we're a protected area, as I spoke about, with a management body known as the Lapalala Wilderness Foundation non-profit company. We're not able to provide full open access for public nighttime access to our stars and our skies. And the reason being because we house a number of black and white rhino and the high poaching incidents that occur in South Africa currently for their horn. We've waived public access for everybody, but through the school and through the guests that come through the lodges, we are giving access to public to be able to see the beautiful stars that we have and the night skies and the ecosystems that link to that. And we have an average value of, as I said earlier, 21.98 magnitudes per square arc second within the reserve. So our process really, one of the things, as I'm sure most of you on the call are aware, we had to monitor our night sky quality using an SQM device. So between our baseline, which we did for 3 months, and then the now just over 2 years of monitoring, our average across the reserve is sitting at 21.41 through this measurement. So it's above the 21.2 threshold. So obviously the higher the number, the better your quality of your skies are. And how we did this was taking a number of sites across the reserve. So the reserve is the outline in red. We have our lighter sites in pink. So those are sites where we have infrastructure built and there is lighting. And then I took some representative dark sites, so those that are more in the wilderness areas of our reserve without any infrastructure currently. And then the blue one is a magical place called Lookout, which is a deck that you can essentially sleep and under the stars and cook food and really just spend time out there, but it's not often utilized. So it's a mix between a sort of a dark site and a light site. So this is just a picture that Gareth has taken on our reserve. As he mentioned in his talk, we've got a lot of termites and ants, really important in terms of pangolins, but we do have 2 glows that occur, one from a town called Lepelale further north to us, and one called Mokopani. So this is just an example of one of the glows, but still a relatively small glow in comparison to being close to cities. So then we had to do a light audit. Again, anybody who's been through the process will understand this. So any lights that are outside, we had to look at their Kelvin level, their color temperature, whether they were shielded, where the light was going, was it necessary, and really just try and have light that's fit for use in that particular area. So again, all the sites that we have lighting are shown on the map. The blue, if we look at the table, the blue ones are essentially our 2 lodges, our commercial lodges, and they have a very high compliance level currently with their lights, sitting at around 75% compliance levels. Then we look at our custodian sites, so those are the private homes, and they vary quite substantially. You'll see Kolobi Lodge is quite low. It's a very old lodge with a number of non-working lights and a number of quite high floodlights. So that's where we'll have to work there. And then the school, most recently built, it's been in existence for about 3 years in its new position. And so that's why it has such high compliance levels in terms of lighting, because we tried to be sustainable in the entire build process. But overall, our reserve is currently sitting at just over 67%. As I said, we had to audit all the lights, which are just under 1,800. And so over the next 10 years, we need to change just under 600 lights on our reserve or fixtures. So our current goals at the moment is by the year 3 to be 80% compliant, year 5 to be 90% compliant, and year 10 to be 100% compliant. So just to run through some of our lighting changes that we've already implemented. So up in our northern property, we've managed to not, so we're retrofitting and hopefully will change. So you'll see it's an orange tick. So we had these bulkheads. We've gone and painted black on the inside. So you'll see when it's lit at the bottom, it does cut out some of that glow going upwards, but you'll see the brightness of that light is still too high. So we need to just change the bulbs to bring that down. Also, still in the north, we had a number of different fixtures, sort of the lantern style, and again, some bulkheads. And we've now retrofitted them with these little lights that face downwards, as you see in the bottom image. In our staff village, which we call Sun Village, we've changed most of the fittings, both the fittings and the bulbs. So again, a variety of very old school style fittings at the top. And now we've got these quite modern down-facing lights. And then this is that lookout section I was talking about. And so there we had a lot of these little electric lanterns. And again, we've put the same fixture that we've now put in at Sun Village. So we've already made a number of changes, but there are still, as you saw, quite a few to make. So many of our fixtures are either these up and down lighters, they're these bright fluorescents, they're these spotlights that face upwards, or they're just completely unshielded, like the picture on the right. So we do have a number of replacements still to do, removing non-working fixtures and also changing a number of the bulbs to be within the right temperature gradient. We've also started to be much more aware on our nightly activities, both from a reserve protection point of view. So we use infrared drones, and our teams on the ground use spotlights. So even when our patrols are out, or whether you've got guests on a night drive, they use the red light obviously to limit the impact on the night sky as well as the animals' eyes and behavior. So this is one of the changes that's also more recently happened. But I thought I'd also I think we're in quite a unique position in that we have the challenge of rhino poaching in our country. And so you'll see the figures sort of between 450 and 500 since 2021 through to 2023. In 2024, there were 420 poached, and then already in the first half of this year, we're sitting at just under 200. So it's a big problem for our reserve. We spend a huge amount of money on our security and different security initiatives to protect our rhinos, because we're also one of the few reserves in the area that does not dehorn or remove the rhino horns. So we like to keep them as natural as possible and rather protect them. So this has meant that for some of our areas, we've got quite bright lighting, and particularly one of our challenges is around our east gate, which is along our main boundary route, like a main road as well. So we have a lot of traffic going through there. It's also where it's easy access for poaching activity to come through. But also at these gates, we require good visibility for camera recognition of vehicles coming past, because we need to be able to not only pick up known vehicles, but known vehicles to sort of either any sort of illegal crime activity, not only poaching, but also just another way we need it is to see our community members who may be in need. So we have a number of rural villages near our reserve, and the community often uses this gate when they are in need of an emergency. So we've got to be able to identify them at the gate when they come in as well, and not just let anybody in. And obviously, being a big five, we can try and have fencing, but dangerous game does roam, it does get through fences, and so that poses a risk for staff and visitors alike. Also, our lodges and some of our custodian sites have unfenced areas and walkways where staff and guests are walking. So this obviously poses a bit of a challenge in terms of having enough light to see, but not too much light that it causes an issue for our night skies. So that's also been one of the challenges we've been working at. And then just our remoteness and not being close to shops, we often have an issue in consistency of stock of our different types of bulbs. So sometimes on occasion, this will mean we have to use a brighter light just initially until we can get stock of a more recognized brand. So then going forward, some of our sort of future activities is we want to share the enjoyment and education with as many people as possible. So you'll see at the bottom, our lodges have what they call sky beds, which allows the guests to safely sleep out under the stars, as well as having stargazing given by the guides. We also, through the school, the Wilderness School that I've mentioned that I work with, we are going to be implementing much stronger light pollution and dark sky advocacy and education sessions, including using some telescopes to see some of the closer constellations. Being quite rural, there's a lack of access to many of these tools, and many children will not have seen, they will see from their naked eye perspective, but they won't have seen some of these magical constellations and stars and planets at a closer level. We're also going to be obviously reporting and monitoring everything that we do. So we're in the process of busy talking to Earth Ranger, which is largely a wildlife sighting and monitoring platform that many reserves use globally. And so they're busy creating a template for me to be able to monitor what night activities happen on the reserve. So whether it's a patrol or a night drive, and understanding how much we are sharing and doing on our reserve at night. Then very excitedly, South Africa has recently launched their National Astrotourism Strategy and Implementation Plan. So we plan to collaborate with this group, and have been asked since receiving our certification to be able to participate and help guide the process to allow more places and people to understand light pollution and to become dark sky certified. So we'd like to be a working reference for protected areas that are faced with a high risk of poaching, and showing that a balance can actually be achieved between having tourism, protecting your wildlife, using your anti-poaching operations, and implementing responsible lighting practices. And so, yeah, as I think Gareth announced, and it's been shared a couple of times, we were very excitedly the 250th dark sky place to be announced. We're the first dark sky park in South Africa, the second dark sky place in South Africa, and only the third in Africa. And we're really, really excited to see how we can make a difference, even more so from an ecosystem and wilderness point of view, from our animals and from our people, culture and connection to nature, which we seem to have lost in our more recent years. And so Kia Laboga, which is Sepedi for thank you, it's our local language. And yeah, just leaving you with a beautiful image from our reserve. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bronwyn. And now we'll have Dr. Siskoyola.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris. It's still morning in Namibia, so let me greet you in my language. Omarara Tunawa, which means good morning in Oshuambo, and good afternoon for those who are in other part of the world, or good evening. As I was introduced, my name is Sisko Awala from a country in Southern Africa called Namibia, with the most pristine night sky in the world. And today I was thinking, when I was invited, I'm so privileged, and I want to thank Dark Sky International for inviting me as a speaker, or maybe as a storyteller today, because I was thinking, should I prepare slides? How should I structure my talk today? And I had thinking of preparing slides, but this morning when I woke up, I felt like, no, I want to speak from my heart. So I hope you excuse me that I haven't got detailed slides. I just really felt like today I want to connect with all of you who are doing amazing work to protect what we have on the night sky. So I'm speaking from my heart. Just all pretend you are in Namibia, under the pristine night sky, sitting around the fire, and I'm going to share my story. As I mentioned, I was born in Namibia. I still live in Namibia, and I'm currently a researcher at our local university, Namibian University of Science and Technology. I'm based in Windhoek. And that is what I'm doing currently now, but I'll go into more details later. But I want to start with how I grew up in Namibia and how I got so much involved in dark sky. As a young African child, growing up in the northern part of Namibia, close to the border with Angola. I was born in a village called Onipa, very rural. And that's before we moved to the city. So I still feel like I was privileged to have grown up in that era where my uncle, my mother's brother, he's passed on now, but he was very knowledgeable about stars. And he learned from his grandfather, and he's been really transferring this knowledge of the star knowledge that he knew to the next generation. So as a young child growing up in Namibia, I always remember that after supper, because we've got a star, the evening star, which we called Omaulalelo in my language. So every time after we had supper, we have to see if the visibility of Maulalelo is coming, because as soon as you see the Maulalelo, then we are all running to the fire, to sit around the fire, because my uncle will be coming there and coming to tell us about these beautiful stories to do with the stars. And some of the stories were not just stars really, it was folklore and stories to do with animals and he also taught us different names of the stars. Like as I mentioned, I can only remember a few now, like the Omaulalelo. So really at the early age, I had that memory of spending nights under the night sky as a young child. You know, we used to lie on our backs, and that time it almost even felt like you could touch the Milky Way. It was so close, it was so alive when he told those stories. And unfortunately, my parents have to move to the cities for work, and at the early age when I was young, we have to move back to the city. And I lost totally that connection that I had in my early growing up with the night sky. So when I moved to the city, obviously because of light pollution, and there was no more tradition of going to look outside for the Omaulalelo to come out so you can go listen to the stories. You know, we spend most of in the cities, we spend most of our days indoors. There was light pollution, and the whole cultural practice was not there anymore. So we had to watch TV and a lot of Western cartoons. We have to go to school and learn Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And there was nothing. And even at school, when I started studying in primary school, when we taught astronomy, there was nothing about what my uncle used to tell us. No mention of Maulalelo in school. So I felt like, no, what something is missing. Why can I not also hear the stories that my uncle used to tell us at school? And now I just have to learn Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. But my uncle used to teach us other kind of stories and songs related to the stars. So that was my early growing up. And in African cultures, stars and sitting around the fire as children, it was a form of education for us, because it really created a curiosity and stimulated our imagination, because it was almost like our Netflix that time, because it stimulated imagination, because even when you lie on your back under this beautiful night sky, you start imagining all the different constellations that and different things. So it was really, I feel like it was our university in those days. So to make it short, because I could go on and on, I know we are doing a storytelling and around the fire right now. So what happened now, after I've moved to the city and I've lost this connection, I moved into my career and I started moving into tourism. I did a PhD in community-based tourism. And during COVID, just after I came back from South Africa studying community-based tourism, I was locked down. I went to the village because my mother moved back to the village. And then I went back to the village where I grew up in Onipa during COVID. And I spent most of my nights there. And I remember everything came back to me again about those stories, about looking out for Omaulalelo to come out so we can hear these stories as a young child. And I realized something is missing because I realized being in the tourism industry, ecotourism was always a tourism activity in Namibia for many years. But there was no cultural interpretation of Namibian culture's relation to the night sky. And I thought maybe with my tourism, there's something I can do. And luckily during that time, during COVID, I met Dr. Hannah Douglas. She's an astrophysicist. From that time, she was at the University of Oxford. I met her, we just met at the right time when I had these questions in my mind already of what can I do to make a difference on protecting this pristine night sky of Namibia, and most important, its cultural heritage that is being lost. And when I met her, she was working for the University of Namibia, working on a project to do with ecotourism. And we started working together, and then we started to embark on a project to do with the sand communities, the indigenous sand communities in Namibia, in a conservancy called Nyanyai Conservancy. So that was early at the COVID time, 2021. We started on a project now, finding ways to develop ecotourism, really a community-driven ecotourism experiences in Namibia that can integrate indigenous knowledge of astronomy into the experience, because this is what was missing in Namibia. As you know, Namibia is the first country in Africa to be recognized by Dark Sky International with a Nami brand. It's the first dark sky reserve in Africa. So we have already been recognized as a country as the most pristine night sky and the first African country to have the dark sky reserve. And thank you so much for that. So now we have work to do now to really bring the Namibian indigenous people's interpretation of the night sky. And in this way, we can give value, because sometimes it's very difficult to convince, especially policymakers, on why we need to spend so much investment in protecting the night sky. But if we can use if you can use the dark sky as a valuable resource for Namibia through ecotourism development that could impact positively on communities and bring income, not only income, but also bring in as an education tool to preserve our indigenous knowledge of astronomy, and also transfer this knowledge to future generations. So this is what I've been working on for the past years with the Nyanyai community. And for those who want to follow my work, you can also go on LinkedIn. I've been posting occasionally some of the work that I have been involved with on this project. And what is interesting is when I'm working with indigenous communities, they are actually very passionate about preserving their indigenous knowledge of astronomy, and they want to share it with the world. And now the fear is now with this light pollution, and that has an influence on how we see the future of astrotourism in Namibia. And my work really as an advocacy for protecting the night sky is to use astrotourism as a tool to convince policymakers that it can bring immediate, tangible value, not only for tourists, but also for Namibians and Namibian indigenous communities, and also for myself, because the experience that I had experienced as a young Namibian African child growing up in the rural area, that experience is priceless, and we need to share it with the world. And if we entice people through astrotourism, when people from all over the world are coming to Namibia to experience the pristine night sky with meaning, because the indigenous stories and the indigenous astronomy linked to the experience of the night sky gives meaning to our night sky. And we need to understand that the night sky is more than just calculating, measuring, and giving names to stars. The stars are alive, they have meaning, and we need to promote that so people can have an intrinsic connection to the night sky. And when they have this intrinsic connection to the night sky, we are more eager to protect what we have of our night sky. I know I'm telling a story, and we are around the fire in Namibia, but what I want to end with is actually what is my next step as an advocate. I feel like I'm an advocate for the night sky. Is I'm really trying to work. Maybe what I can mention as well is that during August this year, we were honored to have Megan, who is the editor of the Nightscape for Dark Sky International, visit us at Nyai Conservancy. And we're really honored by her visit, and also Joyful from OAD in Cape Town. So this is just some of the activities that we've been involved with, and trying to get awareness of the work we are doing. So our next step in this project is really still developing astrotourism in Nyai Conservancy, to start with the Nyai Conservancy as a model, but we're really focusing on community-led. And we are trying to integrate technology into the experience. We are working with professors from our university, and also professors from Denmark, who are working on virtual reality integration into the experience, because sometimes you come to Nyai Conservancy and the weather, it doesn't allow you to always every night experience the pristine night sky. So we've got alternative of trying to use technology to create this experience, but it's really being co-designed with the indigenous people. And it's a work in progress. And this is what we're working on. And I'm also working, I've been spending time visiting schools and talking about how important it is to protect our night sky, and really working towards following South Africa's path, because South Africa has their own astrotourism strategy. So the idea is also to have Namibia move in that direction, so we can move forward in protecting our night sky. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed sitting around the fire in the pristine Namibian night sky.
That was great, Cisco. Thank you so much. Josh, I'm so sorry to follow that act.
No worries at all, guys. So I just wanted to say thank you very much for having me here to speak for Under One Sky. So just to give a perspective for all tuning in today, I'm based over in the southwest of England. And so here in the United Kingdom, we are seeing some major changes to light pollution as well as dark sky areas. And so today, the way I thought I'd tackle this is to just give a brief introduction, the sort of work I've been doing, and how it links to dark sky advocacy. So what I'll do now is I'll just swap over to the slideshow, and we'll take it from here. And so a journey of exploring the wonders of the night by taking visual images of the universe to present and show how the night sky is changing. So to give a brief background about my work, so I have a very fortunate title that is an internationally acclaimed, award-winning landscape astrophotographer. So some of the images that you'll see today have been endorsed by none other than NASA, Apollo 11, the European Space Agency, as well as the World at Night with associations to the National Geographic, and a scientific journal known as Nature. Earlier this year, I found out the news I'd become a best-selling author, as well as actively being here as a speaker and writer as well. I also act as an ambassador for some different photographic brands. So just to break it down, Sigma produced some lovely quality camera lenses, and Nisi produced filters, which you put in front of a camera lens to create visual effects. But also actively collaborating with Canon, Benro, who produce tripods, Timber for camera bags, and also Move Shoot Move as well. They produce these beautiful portable star trackers, so it's great. So if I'm heading on down to Namibia anytime soon, I'll be using one of those. But also acting as a delegate for Dark Sky International here for Bristol and the southwest of England. So over my career, over the past 2 decades, I've been very fortunate to document many wonders of the natural world, from eclipses to the elusive aurora, but also waves that glow in the dark, that beautiful neon blue of the bioluminescence. Just trying to capture and really utilize storytelling within images to create this connection between land, earth, and sky. But very fortunate with some of these images to take it further afield to major competitions, such as the Astronomy Photographer of the Year competition, based over in Greenwich in London, and just throughout the years creating new images to present the fields of these environmental impacts which we are facing. But what was interesting, though, was the events of last year. In terms of outreach, broadcasting, and advocacy, this image was very important, of the iconic landmark that is Stonehenge. It's a place close to my heart. We can see that there's light pollution in the image alone, but what happened to this image was positively ridiculous. It went viral across the world. So not only to have this endorsement by NASA, but to see social media posts translated in other languages, to get more people interested looking up, in this instance, for the Perseid meteor shower, which is this peak during the 13th to the 14th of August. And it was just so lovely to see all these interactions taking place. I want to see the shooting stars and the meteor showers. So this was a huge opportunity. But this was the cherry on the cake. I'll just lower my guard for a minute, but when you're having a gin and tonic one evening on a Friday night and a friend messages you on X Twitter to say, Josh, you need to look at this, Dr. Buzz Aldrin had endorsed the photograph. It was huge. And only for a week later to meet our own European Space Agency British astronaut Tim Peake in the UNESCO World Heritage City of Bath to present the picture which he had formerly endorsed. So in terms of latest work and opportunities, I wanted to present images that are more aligned with dark sky advocacy. And so I wanted to present this image, which is a fairly recent development here in the UK, which is the implementation of an international dark sky reserve on the Cranbourne Chase. So very close to where I live, about an hour's drive. But I just wanted to see and capture these beautiful signs which are being installed in and around the reserve. So it's almost trying to show the barriers between light pollution and these beautiful, splendid views of the night sky, almost to try and dictate this contrast between the two worlds. Only this week, which was very exciting news, to present an image to the British Photographic Awards. So you'll be able to see it here on the right-hand side and have a slightly bigger image to show later, but how our night skies are changing, to show that contrast between our ancient past, what the ancestors observed, and the influence of the modern world. So the opportunity to present this to the greater outreach for British photographers as well. What is happening? This was huge. But this one is the one that hits me hard to the core. To paint a picture for listeners across the world listening now, this image was taken in the very far northern reaches of the United Kingdom, which is known as the Outer Hebrides, as the Isle of Lewis. And here are some of the oldest primitive observatories of my country. And it was here that I utilised this photograph of the Callanish stones. When I took this photograph, I felt very emotional when seeing this, because it's realizing what's going to happen to this site in the next year or 2 years. Access is going to change. So right now you can walk inside the stones. There is now a multi-million-pound project taking place. And so access will no longer be possible to this site. There is also, and this is what I was told by locals when I was interacting with them, that a major wind farm project is going to be installed in and around this site, which is a Bortle Scale 1 site, the darkest skies we have in the UK. And to just stand there, taking this photograph, and to realize all of these aspects, this jigsaw puzzle coming together, was one of the most emotional stories in my life, because this image, or rather the location, is what made me an award-winning photographer, to take an image and then suddenly start receiving these endorsements. So this was an image I wanted to pay homage to Callanish. Also these as well. If you're not used to seeing these, it almost could be identified as an alien invasion. We're seeing more satellites being launched into the night sky. And what amazed me was we can actually see them launch from Florida and be seen from the southwest of England. This is just one instance of a Falcon 9 launch, and we're seeing this ejected fuel being spewing off into lower parts of the Earth's atmosphere, where it's being turned into ice crystals at these very cold temperatures. It ejects this light. And so to see this, and in one regard, the pollution of the night sky was very, very powerful to witness. Of course, a double-edged sword, which I'll discuss momentarily, but it's seeing how our skies are changing. So it's during my degree, I'll make this very quick, but I studied photography and I've become very familiar with environmental projects which are happening. So you guys might be familiar with David Attenborough's Blue Planet 2, where we were seeing changes to the plastic crisis. And I thought, how are we seeing change to the night sky? And it was through my friend here, Bob Meisen, who's sadly not with us now, who introduced me into this world of dark sky advocacy. And it was from here that I learned about artificial light and night. I learned about mega constellations, how the sky is changing, not only to astronomers, but also to nocturnal marine wildlife, as well as ourselves, to human health. And that is why I'm a part of Dark Sky International, as an advocate for using photography as a platform to evoke change. A lovely community of like-minded people who, like today, we come together as one to share that belief so that we can really strive to protect the night. But it's already been highlighted in the talk today, so I respect that. But just to show from my little part of the world how light pollution is being measured, the Bortle Scale Index, 1 being the darkest skies we can get, up to 8-9, the most light polluted. So in areas where you can see no colour, green, blues, reds, and so on, just have a look at the UK map and see how many areas are actually dark. And that is the northwestern parts of Scotland. I'll just indicate that by my mouse here. Look at that for scale. Oh, we are losing the skies here in the UK, especially with housing developments, with changes to lighting policy as well. There's so many things going on now which are putting pressure on urban sprawl and further afield. I won't go through all of this now. This is there just to look at in the background if you so wish. But I've been working with Dark Sky International to look into a series of principles for responsible astrophotography. Understandably, and I am very much an advocate for this, when you see an image of the night sky, it's magic. Everyone wants a piece of the action. You want to take in a photograph of it. But what is interesting, though, is as the subject becomes more popular, we're seeing pressure on beauty hotspots, dark sky places, and it's where inappropriate means of portable lighting is being used that is putting pressure to all these elements which I've talked about, nocturnal life and also the environment as well when utilizing photographs. Which is why I wanted to present this image here. So it's from the south coast of England, a beautiful place called Durdle Door. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I took this photograph during the summer months, and look what's happening. You can see the story before your very eyes when you see portable forms of light pollution along the edge of the coast. And what is interesting, after they left, you could see that there were glowworms all along the edge. So imagine what that light is doing to them. But you can also see how appropriate uses are being used, from red torches. You're using that wavelength of light to protect your night vision and your surroundings. Some photographers also not using light as well, so that's always that's what we're trying to go for. But again, it's just showing how, you know, we need astrotourism, we need to be promoting the night sky, but we need to be doing it sustainably as well. The night sky should be a universal resource for all. And so, if moving on to the next slide, that is why I'm very glad to be participating with Dark Sky International, to show these images, to show what we can be doing as advocates, as the way forward for as the subject progresses. But that's why I say, when you take a photograph, before you publish it to social media, with great power comes great responsibility. When you share that image, people want that piece of the action. So it's just being careful how we deliver that message on these digital platforms. But, you know, very briefly, that's what I try and do here in the UK, is through this advocacy to spread the word, the Dark Sky mission, across major TV and media outlets here in the UK, from the BBC to the ITV, as well as publications as well, like photography, astronomy magazines, to spread the word, what it is we are doing, our mission as well. But even photography talks as well, these are great because it's exposing this pool of photographers who want to interact these style of images about really what is going on in the world right now, or rather the heavens above. But what is also very important, and I believe Megan's in the talk now, but what is so important is taking these images further afield, to take them to Parliament, to take a group of UK advocates to government and really present the pressing issues which are happening today. The impacts that, you know, ministers, MPs may not be so aware of at the moment, but through the passion, the enthusiasm which is happening, I believe we can make change. And it's all about, where I believe, taking the photograph. That is the catalyst for change, presenting these images to the greater world. I just wanted to highlight this very briefly. And so what one of my projects has been this year is to produce my first book. Through 52 assignments, night photography by Ammonite Press, I'm attempting to get more of us interested in looking up to the night sky, so that we can take these attitudes home, so that we can all make a difference, that when we interact with dark sky places, that we can begin to think, actually, I don't need that light on anymore. Maybe I could tell my neighbor that we don't need to do this. It's all a part of the mission of getting more of us interested in taking photographs. This is just from my recent book launch, these series of images, but it's basically a series of 52 projects. So you could do it one a week per se, and it's to embrace sustainable astrophotography, realizing the possibilities of your camera, and designed for anybody, avid or professional photographers. It's really to try and learn the basics of your camera and to marvel at the wonders of the natural world. And it was only this year I found out this news. It was recognized as an Amazon #1 bestseller. I thought, wow, that was brilliant news. And then here in the UK, so this is like the, let's say, US version of Barnes and Noble, we have Waterstones. And to walk into your local bookshop and to see it there on the astronomy bookshelf, it was just great. So already to see that the mission is working, it's moving, now being sold in America, Australia, to see all this online, it's just like, what have I done? And here it is, just as a couple of examples: Walmart, Target, Barnes and Noble, just yum yum. So guys, I wanted to keep it short, but my name is Josh Shorey, landscape astrophotographer, and I hope you've enjoyed my talk here today for Under One Sky. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh. Wow, that was a great talk, and what a great panel. Just wow, you all are amazing. Everybody on the call, but you speakers too. So we're going to go ahead and start some Q&A with our wonderful speakers again. I'll get them back on the screen, see all their beautiful faces. And if you do, folks, I was going to say, if you're at home, I don't know if you're at home, maybe you're out sitting out at a fire looking up at the stars. I know I wish I was. So do send in any questions you have in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll just get started with that now. I guess Bronwyn, this one's for you, but feel free to take it as best you can. How might a country or a dark sky sanctuary start as they begin their astrotourism journey?
Sure, yeah, I'll give it a go. So I think just based on my experience, I went straight to actually the Dark Sky website and started just looking at resources. What does it mean to be a sanctuary or a park, or what do you need to do? What is important to look at? And also then I reached out to one of the other African mentors from another dark sky certified place, engaged with them, saw how they did the process. I think that was really the starting point. And then sort of more locally on site is you have to obviously identify what you want to certify, you know, what area it is, how much lighting is there, what are you likely to need to change, and just even understanding, as I said, I sort of knew nothing. So I had to start with even what is a bulkhead mean, what is you know, fully shielded mean. So getting a grip to those terminologies first. And even then some of them I'd slightly misinterpreted. So I just very quickly, I think that's a really quick start. So do a bit of background reading, get a bit of understanding on the ground, network, and then get into the process. Start it. There's no better way than jumping in to the fire. So yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Absolutely. And that was a key takeaway from one of our other sessions. Just do it. Just get in there. Get after it, as we say in this house. Awesome. And Cisco, we had a question. How do you balance honoring cultural knowledge with the demands of tourism or any sort of economic development as it relates to your work? Oh, you're on mute.
My apologies for that. What is interesting is that when I went into this project, you know, you all have all conceived ideas of how you want to develop these experiences because of my experience in tourism and how tourism is done. And we're trying to do things differently now, really. We want to hear from the people themselves, how they want to create this experience, the indigenous people, how do they want to transmit their knowledge? Because even working with the communities and even working with some of the indigenous knowledge holders, there's certain knowledge that they don't want to share with the tourism or with the world. There's certain issues they don't want to share, and certain stories they want to share. So we have to find the balance now in really respecting them on what they want to share with the world and how they want to do it. And the most important is balancing it now, is because I know sometimes tourism in the past has been known as commodifying cultures, commodification of cultures. And this usually happens when there isn't really a community-led experience. And usually indigenous people in tourism are usually almost the product of the experience instead of the creator and the driver of the experience. And this is what we want to do differently so we can avoid that and create a good balance, as much as of a good balance in portraying this indigenous knowledge. I mean, indigenous knowledge of astronomy, ancient African indigenous knowledge is one of the oldest science that we know in the world. And it needs to be given proper value. It cannot just be portrayed like a quick experience or a dance or a pure entertainment. It should really be packaged in a way that it becomes an education tool to give deeper meaning into the experience. So this is what we are moving towards, not just superficial experiences, like you're coming to a Disney World and you're coming to see indigenous people practicing their indigenous astronomy or their relation to the night sky. To create it as a tool to educate the world on the cultural importance of the night sky to humanity. And these Nyanya people, the Sans Chuhuansi people, are our first people. They say the first people. So they have rich knowledge they want to share with the world, and we need to do it responsibly. So this is the whole idea, trying to create that balance on focusing on really the indigenous people themselves driving this experience as an educational tool for deeper meaning, to create a transformation experience within the visitors, so they can have a intrinsic experience of the night sky through a cultural eyes of indigenous people. I hope I made it. Answer the
Absolutely.
question.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, and then some. Love your responses. Thank you. We'll go back to you, Bronwyn. You had mentioned in part of your talk, you're seeing a maybe resurgence of the environmental side of the park. Could you speak to how the dark sky was used, or dark sky designation kind of unlocked any other outcomes or results for you?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So we've only just received our certification, even though we've been going through the process. But I think not only from a sort of utilizing red lights and things like that on game drives, I think just even from people awareness. I mean, I did mention, and Dr. Siska also did, how few night sky parks or sanctuaries and so on in Africa. So it's a relatively new concept here, and I think not everybody thinks about it. So it's definitely allowed a bit of communication, starting up a new discussion, a new conversation really in the area. And I think particularly where we live, we've also got a big diversity, very rural, where some people don't have any lights, for example, all the way to sort of high-end lodges. So I think there's going to be some nice changes through that process. Yeah, I think just a connecting of our different workings on the reserve, whether that's your anti-poaching units, your management, your lodges, your guides, everybody just being much more aware. Yeah, I guess that's some of the things that have come out.
That's great. Thank you. Josh, over to you, and not to put the entire astrophotography industry on your back, but images carry a lot of weight, and arguments or messages that words sometimes can't say. How do we make more creators and artists into advocates, not just more observers?
A very interesting question, Chris. So I strongly believe that it begins with the visual. So already just looking at the panel, we have background images, and it's there where I think that is where we begin that catalyst for change, but also adapting the policy as well. It goes into the deeper form of storytelling. And that's where I think with these changes, that because it's a popular subject, these are not necessarily made aware to the greater community. So that's where I feel like we need to start making this discussion happen by presenting somewhat controversial images to show what is the greater picture happening. Because even when we apply image stacking, there are things which are happening in the night sky which we don't necessarily see in the final result. That could be satellite streaks through recent comets viewed in the night sky, or a simple Photoshop of removing an area of light pollution. But whereas if we keep the image at the raw form as it was, then we see the greater picture of what's happening, like that Durdle Door image. That's one of the classic images where, you see so many photographers wanting to get that picture, but it's also just, again, being aware of your environment. That is why I think, like Capture the Dark was a brilliant example this year, because it's just showing another means to where we can really put photography into different pools. So, through astrotourism is obviously really hot at the moment, for where we're seeing some of the most beautiful dark skies, but also just that consideration for where you're going. I can name some examples here in the UK, like that project at Cannonish, to see how somewhere so beautiful and so dark is going to change in the next year. Like, it's quite terrifying, really. So I feel like we need, one of my missions as an advocate is we need to be inspired by something in order to protect it. And again, the reason for being a part of the mission, Chris. Yeah.
Nice. Great response. Thank you. You folks have some good questions, but you're kind of stumping me with some of them. Josh, I'll stick with you. Have you noticed anything that shifted in your personal growth or artistry as it relates to your photography, as I guess you've developed as a delegate?
I would say so. And the way I can link to that is where I'm based. So for anyone who's maybe channeling in from the UK, I'm based around what's known as the Mendip Hills. So it's an area of outstanding natural beauty. And it's during these past 2 decades, I have noticed a change to the night sky. And so, whether that is just through movement of housing to, migration really is one way of looking at it. And just where lighting policy is changing, I think we need to be changing with this story as well. So I try and capture these images in different ways to show this change, like, even from images which could have been classed as, an avid image 2 decades ago, but you compare that with an image of now and that stark contrast of change. And I think it's just trying to utilize different visual methods to show how light pollution is changing, how we are seeing these changes to the sky, that it gets you to the soul. It's the emotion. It's just like what Cisco says. That's where I relate so much to you with your work, is that passion, the love for it. And it's when that comes across is where the most powerful work seems to happen. So I think, yeah, it's a great board to really advocate for here today.
Awesome. Yeah, Cisco, we'll turn over pretty much the same question to you as you've been on your journey. Of course, your impressive education, as well as getting your start into tourism and dark sky advocacy. What's something that maybe you've changed or you've learned that's shifted your commitment? Sorry, I can't hear you again.
I think what have shifted is because I think I've been working in solo. I felt like I was working in solo for so long, and being part of a community, of even being in this under one sky conference, being part of a community of advocates around the world, it's really encouraging. And it gives me a different perspective of what is happening around the world. And that inspires me to work even better, and also share what is happening around the world with the community that I'm working with. And I think that is really motivating, and I'm grateful for that. And what as well that I learned from, especially working with communities now, is that sometimes we are so concerned about trying to tick off different activities of your project, and then we realize that communities have different perspectives of how they want astrotourism to be like. And it's very important that whatever we do in astrotourism, developing astrotourism, we should put the people themselves, the indigenous people, especially when you relating to cultural experiences, as the center of the experience, not us enforcing ideas and things into them, but them becoming the center of the experience and the co-creator and the designer of the experience. Then it's more authentic and it's more sustainable and responsible in that way, I think. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bronwyn, we had a question come in for you. You mentioned you're working with schools. Are you doing, and I know it's a new dark sky designation, are you planning nighttime activities? Is this mostly during the day? And are you including light pollution education?
Yeah, so maybe very quickly, because there's quite a lot I could say around this, but so we have two arms to the school. We have our sort of outreach that goes out to schools that we can't bring to our school. So we've got some educators there, and they work on what we call a sustainable schools project, which has different pillars that the schools can do projects to better their school in whatever way. So whether it's saving water or vegetable gardens for food security. So that's one arm where we could definitely get schools to start looking at their lighting and the way they they look at light pollution, so we could have that arm. But then those who come to the wilderness school, it's a combination of 60% of people come from our local area, so more your community schools, and then 40% from urban. So we focus on slightly different things depending on who's there, and they do stay overnight, anywhere between 2 nights to a week. So without a doubt, there's opportunity to grow. We already do. We have what we call sleep out, where we actually take them out into the bush and they sleep under the stars. We do some level of stargazing, and we will start to bring. We haven't really done too much on light pollution yet, so that would definitely be coming in. And then through this process, I guess a little bit linking to what Cisco has been talking about is bringing some of those cultural stories out. Because when I was researching in our area, there's actually nothing written. There's from our sort of neighboring area vendor, there's 1 or 2 stories, but there's very little documented. And I'm fairly confident that within the area, there's lots of stories from the local sort of gogos or grannies and the kids. And we need to, you know, capture that and let these stories come out in their authentic ways and make sure that they're shared. So we also have a BOMA where we do nighttime storytelling, and so hopefully that would also be an opportunity to bring these out.
Great message. Great message. And I hear that replicated all throughout each of you. This is great. Great stuff. So we'll work on wrapping up on the tail end of the session now. I'd love to ask each of you, and whoever wants to go first, what's that one takeaway you'd like to leave your fellow dark sky advocate with, or that one piece of inspiration that you'd be remiss to not say while we're on the line today? Who wants to go first? See Josh shaking his head.
Go on then.
Right.
Yeah, it's one thing with astrophotography I would say is enjoying the marvel of the night sky for how you enjoy it. And what I've really enjoyed is just by listening to the panel today about everyone's story that connects us to the night sky. I find it so interesting that, you know, for those in the northern and the southern hemisphere, when you have that opportunity to connect, I think it's just a fascinating experience. And what, you know, the mission of Under One Sky is, like, you know, we all have that passion. And it's just so amazing, like, you know, Chris, even, you know, with chats in the past, you think we look at the same stars and the same like moon in the sky, and that, you know, we're across different continents, and you think this is incredible. So that is what I would take as, is enjoy it for your mission and what you do, but also how we're connected under one sky as well.
Nice, he said it. Cisco, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, I can go ahead. One thing that I just thought of now is I'm always relating to the night sky as like my little baby now. I don't know, and it's an ancient baby because the night sky is so ancient, and I feel like being part of a community for advocates, it's like this baby of ours, all of ours. We are sharing one baby, and this baby has different mothers and different fathers. And we need to nurture this baby of the night sky, look after it and protect it. So I thought I'll share that. That is how I feel. Thank you.
That's cute.
Yeah, tough things to follow. I think for me, I guess it comes from my journey of moving from sort of a city to a more rural space. And I think it's really just take time out to reconnect. I think we're all so busy and we run around and we do things and we've got projects, but actually just take time to go look at the stars, go listen to the sounds of night, and just, you know, take it all in. I think that would be my go home message.
Nice. I love that. They are our kids, Cisco. I will shut down the house, put all the pets and kids down, and then I'll go, I'll make sure all the lights are off, and I'll just go and look up and I'll see what's visible for the night. And that is such a good whatever that metaphor, simile, whatever it is. Thank you so much, Bronwyn, Cisco, Josh, for joining us today. Top-notch session. Really appreciate it. If anybody has questions for you, okay with folks reaching out after the conference? Perfect. Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks again to our speakers. It really was a wonderful session. We're, of course, going to keep the conference going at our next session, which won't be for a little while until the global open rebroadcast. So if you missed that, join me in about 45 minutes for that. We'll rebroadcast our opening session featuring our MC, Roger Craig Smith, our opening keynote, Lynn Peoples, as well as some special messages from our board president, Nalini Brito, and as well as our CEO, Ruskin Hartley. And that'll be at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. Otherwise, the next workshop is coming up, workshop 4, that's Beyond the Streetlight, How We Light the Night. That's coming up at 9:45 EST. Again, make sure to check out the conference.darksky.org website for the full conference and agenda. We will be closing out the session after the rebroadcast, so you will need to rejoin at that link at that time. We're going to take a little break, make sure our computers are warm enough for the next one. But otherwise, thank you again, folks, and we'll talk to you very soon.